operations of Congress. Their testimony will touch on a wide range of issues. Each witness has clearly devoted much time and analysis to their recommendations. We're impressed that we had to turn away more than half of the people who requested to testify. Maybe our subcommittee is not such a little deal after all. I will call each witness individually to the witness table. After your remarks, members may or may not pose questions to you. We will have a timer on the table. An orange light warns you when you are getting close to your 5-minute limit. But don't worry, I won't gavel you down in the middle of a sentence. But I may ask you to conclude at that point to be fair to the other witnesses who are waiting to speak. Representative Herrera Butler and I think she's not coming back? Oh, you're just stuck with me then. I'll be here throughout the hearing. Other subcommittee members may appear at various points if they can leave their other appropriations hearings. We have a ton of hearings going on today. But we are going to begin with Ms. Audrey Henson of the College to Congress organization.
Well, thank you for having me. Chairman Ryan, members of the staff, and the interns who helped prepare this, thank you so much for the opportunity to present our budget request for fiscal year 2021. I also want to give a special thank you to the subcommittee for their continued support of the bipartisan improvements that have been made to make Congress more efficient and effective. You just heard from your colleagues who serve on the Select Committee for Modernization, where our organization has not only submitted recommendations that have been accepted, we also funded their fall intern who helped make that possible. The Select Committee of Modernization is a current example of bipartisan productivity at its finest, and we are very proud to be championed by one of their members, William Timmons. Appropriations Chairwoman Nita Lowy and subcommittee members Catherine Clark and Dan Newhouse are also champions of ours. I'm before you today to advocate for how we can continue to diversify Congress and make sure that their constituents are represented by the best and brightest in Washington, because the outcome of our work isn't just theoretical, it's impactful and it's working. As you know from walking the halls of Congress, the staff doesn't always reflect the diversity of the constituent base members are representing. In an effort to correct this, I founded College to Congress, a nonprofit on a mission to make Congress more inclusive and effective by recruiting, training, supporting, and placing low-income students from all across the nation into internships here with their representatives in Washington. In the last 4 years, we've worked alongside 76 representatives and senators to create pathways for students from disadvantaged, rural, and low-income backgrounds. My views on these issues are formed by my own experiences, but amplified through the thousands of students we've engaged with across the country. Like 6.8 million students in college today, I was a Pell Grant recipient. I grew up in a mobile home in a small Texas town, and I had to take out student loans to afford my unpaid internship in Congress. I was also fortunate enough to then become an entry-level staffer here in the House. When I was an intern, though, I didn't meet a lot of people with socioeconomic backgrounds like mine. This meant, and unfortunately still means today, that Congress is lacking the perspectives, experiences, and ideas from the working classes of our nation when they're legislating. I hope you hear their stories through my voice today. Their stories are the reason I founded College to Congress. All students who want to serve our nation should have both the access and the opportunity to do so. And members like you, who work so tirelessly for your community, should have access to these highly talented and passionate young people. I've come before you today to ask for the following 3 measures. As mentioned in our written testimony, we're requesting a new office dedicated to the training and professional development for standardized and formal onboarding of all incoming congressional interns and staff. Just as you went through new member training where expectations, procedures, and best practices were shared, this opportunity does not yet exist for incoming interns and staff, who are sometimes as young as 18. Secondly, we are requesting to expand the impact of the House Office of Diversity Inclusion to help recruit, retain existing diverse staff by providing them an annual $250,000 to execute a community engagement strategy with external colleges, community colleges, and universities. Lastly, as I mentioned, we serve Pell Grant students, and they would benefit greatly from an expanded student loan repayment program. According to the National Post-Secondary Student Aid Study, 90% of those who defaulted on their 2016 student loans were Pell Grant recipients. We submitted proposed solutions in our written testimony to address this, and we look forward to working with you to determine the best course of action. Thank you again for this opportunity to testify. We hope that you will consider College to Congress as both a partner and a resource in our shared goals of improving our democracy, modernizing Congress, and empowering the next generation of public servants. I look forward to any questions you have.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Terrific job, and this is obviously very important what you're doing. We've tried on this committee over the last couple of years to finally pay interns.
Right.
I was an intern here long time ago.
Yeah.
But it's an amazing experience, and so let's stay in touch, as we've said. And I'll just say this since everybody's here. In 2011, I've said this 7 times already today, but the House budget was $1.3 billion, and enacted in 2020 it was $1.4 billion. So it was only a $100 million increase over that entire time.
Okay.
And so that affects staff, and so we're just slowly trying to rebuild it, and we put some money in, as I said, for paid internships, which is already proving fruitful.
Right.
Where $1,000 or $2,000 go a long way for somebody to help defer cost of living here in the summer or whatever. So you know all that. But anyway, thank you so much for your leadership. We really appreciate it.
And thank you for all the steps you've already taken to help these students.
You got it.
All
Keep
right.
it up.
Have a great one.
You too. All right, next from the American Association of Law Libraries, Michelle Cosby. Come on up, or come on down.
Chairman Ryan and members of the subcommittee, thank you for holding a public witness hearing on the legislative branch appropriations for fiscal year 2021. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to testify before you today. My testimony will focus on the need for adequate funding for the Government Publishing Office, GPO, and the Library of Congress. The American Association of Law Libraries, or AALL, is the only national association with nearly 4,000 members dedicated to the legal information profession and its professionals. AALL was founded in 1906 on the premise that lawyers, judges, students, and the public need timely access to relevant legal information to make sound legal arguments and wise legal decisions. First, I would like to address the funding for GPO. GPO plays a critical role in disseminating, preserving, and providing public access to official, authentic federal government information in tangible and electronic forms. More than 1,100 libraries participate in the FDLP, including 51 in Ohio and 19 in Washington. My own institution, the Temple University Beasley School of Law Library, just celebrated its 40th year as a selective depository in 2019. AALL urges the subcommittee to provide full funding for GPO's fiscal year 2021 request. AALL has a particular interest in the $32 million request for the Public Information Programs account, which will support the cost of providing federal government publications to the FDLP. This account also funds cataloging and indexing activities, digitization, and the expansion of partnerships with FDLP libraries across the country. AALL appreciates the subcommittee's prior investment in GPO's GovInfo website, and we urge continued support for the development of additional content and new features to meet the needs of key stakeholders. Now I would like to address the funding for the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress holds a vast collection of books, legal materials, recordings, and other unique resources. Housed within the Library of Congress, the Law Library of Congress offers access to an unparalleled collection of domestic, foreign, and international legal material, which I got to tour of yesterday. Thanks to the recent support of the subcommittee, the Law Library has been able to digitize a growing collection of public domain legal information, including the U.S. serial set and Spanish laws and statutes from the 15th through 19th centuries. AALL supports the $23 million request for the Law Library. This request includes the necessary funding for replacement of the Quad B the third of 4 compact shelving units in the library's Jane Madison Memorial Building sub-basement that houses these materials. Replacement of these expired units will provide a safer workplace and ensure more timely access to the law library's collection. AALL also urges funding for the ongoing development of Congress.gov, the official website for the federal legislative information and an essential tool for all legal research. In conclusion, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to testify before the subcommittee for the fiscal year 2021's request of GPO and the Library of Congress. AALL urges you to approve full funding for these legislative branch agencies.
Great. Thank you so much. It's one of the reasons we do these public hearings is we know, we talk, we have hearings, meetings with the Library of Congress, with GPO, with the clerk, but it's very important for us to hear how other people are interfacing with them. So we appreciate you coming in and sharing your story.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Next, we are.
We're going to go a little bit out of order. We're going to go on Hill Silver.
Okay. We're going out of order, so you all know what's going on here. Yeah. Independent consultant testifying on the DACA issues, Angel Silva. Oh, and here with Representative Congressman Pete Aguilar, member of the Appropriations Committee, and a great guy. So you're in good hands.
Thank you.
Are you from his district?
I'm from California.
From California. Great. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Anxious to hear. This has been a very big issue. Obviously, the Congressman has been one of the big advocates, but we've been trying to deal on our side through the legislative branch with taking steps to help accommodate. So we appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you having me here today.
Thank you.
Chairman and members of the subcommittee, thank you for having me here today. I'm grateful to be here to speak about my experience as a documented, unafraid professional and how Section 704 under Title VII, Division A of the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2016 has, for several years, prohibited the legislative branch from compensating DACA recipients like myself as staffers in Congress. I found out about this policy while attempting to work on the Hill, and my experience is not unique. I started out my political engagement through my time at community college at Glendale College, where I was part of the California Dream Network, a group of immigrant student activists pushing for community-focused policies in California and nationwide. It was through the network that I saw firsthand how legislative bodies like the California State Assembly and the halls of Congress could change people's lives. One major legislative victory, financial aid for qualifying non-resident students through the California Dream Act, made it possible for me to transfer to Cal State University Northridge and graduate with a degree in journalism and political science. I remember the failure of the House to take on comprehensive immigration reform in 2013 as a key moment that pushed me to engage within the world beyond activism and enter civic service through Congress. It was through CSUN that I took on my first internship in DC in 2015, thanks to DACA. I remember seeing one of my good friends, who was also a DACA recipient, enter Capitol Hill through the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute internship program. Her success further crystallized this notion that even if we didn't come from privilege and our existence in this country was uncertain, our future wasn't, and that we could achieve what we set our minds to. She motivated me to follow in her footsteps, and in spring 2017, I started the CHCI internship program myself as an intern in Representative Linda Sanchez's office. Through that office, I had the experience that I had been seeking since first becoming an activist, working with people who had the power to codify meaningful change nationwide. Naturally, I wanted to extend that beyond my time as an intern and was thrilled to hear of the Senate Diversity Initiative from a CHCI alum. I reached out to explore my options on the Hill. I still remember meeting with Lorenzo Olvera, the director of the initiative. I spoke about my activist background, about how I wanted to continue advocating for our communities beyond the activist circles. We also spoke about my status, since I wanted to be transparent and I didn't think it would be an issue. I still remember the conversation that we had later on that day. I remember seeing a call come in later on that evening and feeling the full weight of my status and its limitations when I found out about Section 704 and how it explicitly bars people like me from engaging in the most fundamental methods of public service. I didn't know how to react. How would you react if what you've been building up to for years was suddenly unreachable? I continued to explore the possibility of working on the Hill with Mr. Olvera, reaching out after hearing of Representative Pete Aguilar's efforts to remove this barrier. Then the news hit that the president had made the extremely damaging decision to rescind DACA, a choice whose fallout is still being settled in the courts today. Disillusioned, I let Mr. Olvera and his staff know that I was removing myself from consideration for future opportunities on the House or in the Senate. I focused my efforts instead on opening doors for our community to learn from Congress, working at CHCI to open the door for others just as the organization did for me. That was about 3 years ago. Since then, I've grown a great deal and learned a lot about the world in environments that weren't the Hill. I've had the opportunity to work within government, an impossible dream for undocumented folks like myself, in the Baltimore City Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. I've had the opportunity to join in an amazing group of individuals through the Dream Lead Institute, a project from the Hispanic Heritage Institute and Trinity University that brought me into other 29 amazing immigrant advocates together. They all inspire me in one way or another, from the fellows pushing meaningful change in places like Texas and Kansas, to those making meaningful policy happen in New York, and supporting education in Rhode Island and Washington State. They all inspired me to do more despite the barriers placed in front of us. As for the friend I mentioned earlier in my story, she continued interning for her member of Congress in his district office in California after her internship through CHCI ended, this time without pay. When the office asked her to apply for a position in the district office, she asked if it was even possible, and they came across the same provision that I came across. She avoided applying entirely and now works on social responsibility initiatives and advocacy with global clients at one of the most diverse firms in the United States. At the end of the day, these archaic rules restrict the potential of both Congress and of the upward mobility of our communities. The House of Representatives and the Senate both lose out on incredible driven talent every time a DACA recipient finds a career path blocked in the House or in the Senate. The American people lose out on having staffers that understand the nuances of their lived experiences, which is crucial to creating and implementing effective policy. I hope that my journey and that of my friends helps shed a light to what is lost when our dreams, like us, are deferred. I want to thank the subcommittee for your time, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, and there's a lot of us here that feel exactly the same way you do, and you've articulated why it's important for us to take this on, and here's #1 champion in Congress for this issue, Congressman Aguilar, so we appreciate you being here, and Congressman, take as much time as you want.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep this brief. I know there's, you got quite a docket of folks, but I did want to thank Angel for coming out. I wanted to thank Angel for his testimony, and I think it's important. I think the last paragraph that he mentioned that his situation isn't unique. The fact that he's here in front of you and that he's willing to do this speaks volumes. But for him and his friend and for dozens and hundreds of young people who have had this barrier where you and I had opportunities to come to D.C., you on the Hill, me, another place in town, we had opportunities, and that path would have been to be a full-time a staff assistant or whatever that entry-level position is for each office. And the fact that these young people have internships, they put in the time, they know a little bit about this place, they want to learn more, they want to be public servants, and they're prevented. So I wanted to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the committee and this subcommittee for allowing our amendment last time. I know your advocacy in the Four Corners meetings and when you meet with your Senate colleagues about these issues too, you've been an advocate, and I greatly appreciate that. The entire Appropriations Subcommittee, this was an amendment that Angel knows and that our guests know, passed with bipartisan support. This is something that a lot of us agree on, and so we need to keep pushing. Just because the courts are working on DACA doesn't mean we shouldn't work on this issue. And so I appreciate Angel's testimony, appreciate your advocacy and friendship on these issues and so many others.
You got it. Thank you, Angel. Thank you. I don't know if you know this about the congressman or not, but he's one of the stars of the congressional baseball team.
Oh, I think I've seen you play before. I think you've.
You don't get extra points for saying that. He's going to take care of you either way. Just don't ask him who's going to play shortstop, because he doesn't.
That's right. We've got a big competition, but
Mr. Ryan doesn't want to be outsourced.
Is that what it is?
yeah, exactly. So don't run for Congress anytime soon either. You're really
well, current rules don't allow me to do this, so I think y'all are safe for a while.
All right, very good. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks so much.
All right. Mr. Taylor Swift, who is going to be testifying on behalf of Amelia Strauss from Demand Progress. fine young man.
Thank you. There we go. All right. Chairman Ryan, staff of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today to testify. My name is Taylor Swift. I'm a policy analyst for Demand Progress. We are a nonprofit advocacy organization primarily focusing on strengthening Congress's ability to legislate and conduct oversight. I'm here in place of my colleague Amelia Strauss, who unfortunately cannot be in attendance. We greatly appreciate this subcommittee's ongoing work to improve Congress, and we very much appreciate the significant reforms that you included in last year's appropriations bill, as well as in years prior. My testimony today concerns an important and sometimes overlooked agency within the legislative branch, the United States Capitol Police. 2 weeks ago, the subcommittee heard testimony from Capitol Police. In fiscal year 2020, Congress appropriated Capitol Police $464.3 million, or roughly 10% of the legislative branch discretionary funds. This year, Capitol Police has requested a budget of $516.7 million, which represents a significant 11.2% increase over the fiscal year 2020 enacted levels. It is critical to highlight that the percentage of the legislative branch discretionary funds appropriated to Capitol Police has grown substantially over the last 25 years. Adjusting for inflation, the legislative branch has increased its budget by roughly 27% over the last quarter century, from $3.98 billion to $5.05 billion. In that same time frame, the Capitol Police budget has grown by 288%, from $119.5 million to $464.3 million. It's important that the Capitol Police has adequate funding to carry out its critical mission of protecting Congress, including its lawmakers, employees, and visitors, so that constitutionally mandated business can be carried out in a safe and open environment. With the police force the size of the Atlanta Police Department and the funds similar to the Austin Police Department, it's critical to better understand how the United States Capitol Police is deploying and using their resources. Responding to encouragement from Congress, the United States Capitol Police began posting weekly arrest summaries in December of 2018. Our organization has spent the last year examining and analyzing this arrest information, which is only published in a weekly PDF format. Our research, based on the limited information that is available, has led to some interesting findings. Almost half of the incidents reported occurred outside of the normal 9 to 6 business hours, and fewer than 20% of incidents occurred on the Capitol campus grounds. With these facts in mind, we are asking the Capitol Police to publish its arrest information online as a digital spreadsheet in a structured data format that allows you to track arrest records by date and time, arrest location, charges issued, the number of individuals arrested, case file numbers, and more. Publishing this data in a usable digital format is a standard practice within the legislative branch, and I urge this subcommittee to encourage the Capitol Police to adopt the same practice. I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you so much for your time.
Well, we appreciate you coming in and appreciate your advocacy here. It's important that we all keep an eye on what's happening here on Capitol Hill. So thank you, Taylor, for coming in, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, next is from the Director of Congressional Modernization, the Beek Center for Social Impact and Innovation at Georgetown University. Yeah, Lorelei Kelly.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. Look forward to your testimony. Thank you.
Chairman Ryan, thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Yes.
My name is Lorelei Kelly, and I work on congressional modernization at the Beck Center for Social Impact and Innovation at Georgetown. Our mission is to find and scale methods for positive social change. To that end, I'm excited to share information about how the Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress is creating opportunities for civic innovation and building resilience in American democracy. This hearing has great timing. Just yesterday, we convened our first workshop on modernizing Congress, and it was standing room only. The Select Committee is vital for many reasons. Not only is it productive with 45 recommendations and a bill, it is a model of collegiality and informed deliberation, thanks to Chair Kilmer and Vice Chair Graves. The committee symbolizes what I like to think of as an Article I renaissance, a pivotal moment in our democracy where our nation discovers and improves on the methods we use to govern ourselves. To be sure, building a more resilient system will require that we explore new ways for Congress to be informed, responsive, and effective in service to the American people. I've been working on congressional capacity for 20 years, 10 here on the Hill and 10 as an academic. I have never seen such focus, momentum, and concern for this institution as I do today. Not only are we hearing a great deal about Article I and the importance of Congress in the news, but behind the scenes, the gears are sparking. Members are innovating methods for including more constituent voice in the deliberative process. Piloting these methods is one way to build the shared responsibilities that make a democracy resilient. These member-initiated connections not only yield a richer knowledge base for policy, they also reinvest trust and legitimacy in Congress itself. Indeed, civics is making a comeback. Who has not yet listened to the soundtrack of Hamilton the musical? But here's the thing. Americans have spent over $640 million on Hamilton the musical since it opened. That's $30 million more than this year's MRA, the Members' Representational Allowance. It's nearly 5 times the amount we spend on the operations of House committees. And it's 2.5 times more than what we're going to spend on the critical systems maintenance of this chamber. Americans obviously love to sing the praises of democracy. Now we must explain to them why some of that love should be directed here to their most democratic institution. Working on the back end of a system is often invisible and goes unrecognized, but it is vital. Despite being understaffed, the technologists in Congress have overperformed. For example, Congress is now machine readable. Digital capacity has improved its workflow, and an unprecedented trove of data is now available to the public. Indeed, the legislative branch contains the memory of our democracy. Yet when it comes to modern technology and capacity, most of the attention has gone to the executive. For example, when the Open Data Act became law last year, it created requirements for the agencies to up their game on data, tech, and citizen engagement. Congress must be on par with the rest of our federal government. A resilient system has no single point of failure. Congress must be competitive, and this will require sustained investment. Innovation and constituent engagement is yielding results. Faculty at public universities, including The Ohio State University, have been encouraged by the Modernization Committee and have created representative and authenticated methods for constituents to connect to their members. These methods intend to lower the costs and improve communication, and they help lawmakers find the signal in the noise. They offer an alternative to the inaccurate and weaponized information so prevalent on social media platforms. And here on the Hill, the Natural Resources Committee just last week rolled out an environmental justice bill created on a collaborative editing platform, and it was mostly written by the pollution-impacted communities across the USA. So we know that Congress is not geographically contained here on Capitol Hill. It exists in 900 district offices. Nearly half the staff of the House are outside of D.C. And this brings me to my final point, which is the need to view both Congress's civic data and its technical architecture as critical infrastructure that deserves special protection. We must create a secure communication system. The executive branch agencies have one. It's called FirstNet. Where's the FirstNet for Congress? What will we do if movement is prohibited? When members are dispersed across the USA? The coronavirus tells us why we must act urgently on this matter. We cannot call ourselves a resilient democracy until members can carry out their duties from afar. I will submit these comments for the record with more details, and I look forward to following up and assisting you with promoting the Article I Renaissance that we're in right now.
Awesome. I love that. Article I Renaissance. I wrote it down. You may see it again.
Good.
And I will give you no credit for it at all. I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
Welcome to Congress, right? I appreciate your work. Thank you so much. Next, Policy and Government Affairs Associate for the National Taxpayers Union, Andrew Lotz. Andrew, you have the floor.
Thank you. Chairman Ryan, staff of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to submit testimony regarding the fiscal year 2021 House Legislative Branch Appropriations Bill. On behalf of National Taxpayers Union, the nation's oldest taxpayer advocacy organization, We are urging the subcommittee to require a report from the Congressional Budget Office on the costs, benefits, and feasibility of allowing lawmakers to request and receive formal CBO cost estimates prior to legislative markups. CBO produces hundreds of formal cost estimates for proposed legislation every year, but almost 90% of these estimates are produced after a bill has been reported out of committee and to the full House or Senate. While CBO receives thousands of requests for informal reviews each year and will provide informal cost estimates for some bills prior to committee markup, it is clear that the vast majority of legislation marked up by congressional committees come with no formal cost estimate. For a group like NTU, this is troubling. NTU has had a major impact on tax spending and regulatory policies for decades, and like the committees of Congress, we rely in part on CBO cost estimates to make the case for or against legislation with our grassroots network. Providing lawmakers with access to official public cost estimates prior to legislative markups would allow committee members, NTU, and other stakeholders to address the spending, revenue, and deficit impacts of legislation before bills are considered by the full chambers. Fortunately, there's bipartisan interest in asking CBO to produce more formal cost estimates. In 2017, amidst the debate over House Republican replacements for the Affordable Care Act, Congressman Ro Khanna introduced legislation that would have required CBO to produce cost estimates before any ACA-related legislation was considered by the House Committees on Ways and Means, Energy and Commerce, or Rules. The legislation garnered 13 Democratic co-sponsors representing 10 states. Many Republicans are also interested in this policy. The Republican Study Committee, which includes 147 House Republicans, introduced the following proposal in their fiscal year 2020 budget, and I quote, allow the chairman of a committee or the chair of the committee on the budget to request CBO prepare a preliminary report, including estimated budgetary authority on legislation to be considered in committee. In 2018, then House Budget Committee Chairman Steve Womack of Arkansas asked CBO how feasible it would be for CBO to provide cost estimates prior to markups. CBO answered in short, and I quote, about 65 analysts are devoted to producing cost estimates after full committee markup, but producing estimates on a routine basis before markup would eliminate some of the work that now occurs afterward. Nevertheless, the additional resources that would be required would probably be substantial. CBO added that it would be happy to prepare a detailed estimate if helpful. Despite the potential need for additional resources at CBO, making cost estimates available prior to markups would allow lawmakers to more fully analyze and consider the budgetary impact of bills at an early stage in the legislative process. We believe that CBO should conduct a detailed study of this proposal, and to that end, we're requesting the following language be included in the fiscal year 2021 appropriations bill. Within 180 days of enactment, the Congressional Budget Office shall provide to appropriators and make publicly available a report on the costs and benefits of allowing certain lawmakers to request and receive formal cost estimates of legislation prior to committee markups. CBO should examine the feasibility, costs, benefits, and drawbacks of allowing either the chair of a committee, the chair and ranking member of a committee, or the chairs and ranking members of the committees on the budget to request formal cost estimates, and provide guidance on the amount of time and resources such requests would demand from CBO. It should also assess whether and how many additional personnel might be required to accomplish this task. As previously mentioned, NTU strongly supports allowing lawmakers to request formal cost estimates from CBO prior to legislative markups. However, we seek a clear picture of the additional burdens such a proposal will put on CBO, and we request their input on the matter. We believe that a report from CBO is the best way to receive this input. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm glad you said that at the end, because we, obviously, back in 2011, the budget was $1.3 billion. Right. Have you heard that before?
I have,
okay.
Believe it or not.
And so, in that, this is the whole conversation around the modernization, is how much does each component cost, and how do we begin to, make those arguments. But trust me, as a chairman and an appropriator, we would love to have the information at our fingertips sooner rather than later. So we appreciate you being here, and keep up the good work.
For sure. Thank you,
All right.
Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Next is the Director of Cyber and National Security from the Lincoln Network, Daniel Lips.
Chairman Ryan, members of the subcommittee staff, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Dan Lips. I'm the Director of Cyber and National Security with the Lincoln Network, a nonprofit organization that serves as a bridge between Silicon Valley, other technology hubs, and national policymakers. I'm here to testify in support of the Comptroller General's budget request and to urge Congress to provide necessary resources and hiring authorities to allow GAO to expand its science, technology assessment, and analytics team. Today, I'll cover 3 topics: putting GAO's budget request into historical context, GAO's return on investment over the past 20 years, and specifically the value that the STAA team offers Congress moving forward. First, GAO's budget proposal in historical context. A 12% proposed increase may seem like a lot given current budget constraints, and I recognize that Congress and the subcommittee have limited flexibility. But a review of historical data shows that this increase would only continue to rebuild GAO's reduced capacity from previous staffing levels. GAO's request includes funding for 3,250 FTEs, an increase of 50 positions. But 30 years ago, GAO had more than 5,000 employees. And despite operating with 1,800 fewer employees, GAO has delivered considerable value to Congress, as you know. A review of 20 years of GAO's self-reported taxpayer savings estimates shows that GAO's work has yielded more than $1.1 trillion in taxpayer savings and 25,000 in other government benefits. My written testimony includes a table showing a year-by-year breakdown of annual savings, benefits, and return on investment since 1999. And one key trend is that GAO's ROI has been increasing over the past decade. Since 2012, GAO's return on investment has been more than $100 in saving for every dollar Congress spends on GAO each year. And one reason for this increased return on investment is GAO's annual duplication report. In 2010, Congress mandated that GAO annually report on duplication across government programs, thanks to an amendment by my former boss, Senator Tom Coburn. As of last year, GAO's work on duplication has yielded $262 billion in savings since 2011. This shows that Congress can leverage its investment by focusing GAO's work in strategic ways. Which brings me to the Science, Technology Assessment, and Analytics, or STAA team, and why Congress should focus new investments within GAO on this strategic priority. The Comptroller General testified last week that additional requested funding will be used in part to grow the STAA team, to provide scientific and technical assistance to Congress, to improve oversight of major acquisitions, technology, and science programs, and to advance GAO's use of data science and analytics in its auditing work. Each of these priorities will yield significant value to Congress. First, improving Congress's S&T capacity is a recognized bipartisan priority, as you well know, and we thank you for your leadership on that. Strengthening the STAA team will help Congress understand, analyze, and forecast major issues involving science and technology, as well as develop legislation and conduct oversight with greater independence. Second, improving oversight of federal technology acquisitions and science programs will help Congress address some of the biggest challenges facing the nation. From cybersecurity threats to critical infrastructure to risks related to potential pandemics, growing GAO's capacity to oversee tech acquisitions and science programs will help Congress fulfill its Article I responsibilities and strengthen national security and public safety. Third, using data science and advanced analytics to strengthen GAO's auditing has the potential to modernize and perhaps revolutionize federal oversight and drive major savings. This week, GAO reported that federal agencies made $175 billion in improper payments in 2019. Imagine if the federal government could use data analytics to conduct continuous oversight in the same way that banks use data analytics to monitor credit card transactions. We could save tens of billions of dollars each year. In conclusion, I thank you again for the opportunity to testify. I urge the subcommittee to recognize the long-term value of increasing GAO's budget, and particularly the STAA team. History shows that taxpayer dollars spent on GAO are among the best investments that Congress makes. Thank you.
Thank you. We love the GAO.
Appreciate
Phenomenal operation. So you said $175 billion a year in overpayments?
This is in improper payments. It was a report they put out on Monday.
Okay. What was that, Medicare, Medicaid, mostly?
A lot of those programs, but others. And one of the findings of the report was that they can't even tell because agencies themselves don't know. But if they are able to use these data analytic tools to try and help agencies focus on that, we think there would be a lot of savings.
I appreciate you coming. I mean, I think a lot, especially on my side, we defend a lot of the government programs because we agree with their values and we agree with what the goals are, and we don't always do a great job of making sure that the government is running efficiently. And I think that's something, again, talking about bipartisanship and finding an issue or two that we can rally around, that should be one of them, I would think, to give the taxpayer the maximum bang for their buck. And $175 billion in payments that shouldn't be going out is a lot of money, even here in
Absolutely.
town. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Next up, Laura Manley, Director of Technology and Public Purpose Project from Harvard Kennedy School.
All right, thank you.
That sounds like a really cool job.
It is cool.
Technology and public purpose.
I like it a lot.
All right, tell us about it.
Right, Chairman Ryan and staff, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Laura Manley, and I'm the Director of the Technology and Public Purpose Project at the Harvard Kennedy School's Belfer Center. We conduct research on how to integrate societal considerations like safety, privacy, security, and inclusion at each step of a new technology's development and management. I'm here to tell you why it's critical to the safety and prosperity of this country to allocate resources towards improving science and tech capacity in Congress. In the past decade, social media, smartphones, cloud computing, genetic editing, and other technologies have changed how humans live, work, eat, and interact with one another. These technologies hold tremendous promise, but also come with risks. Because of the United States' position as a global innovation leader, with 8 of the 10 largest tech companies in the world based here, the U.S. Congress, more than any other institution in the world, has the power to craft breakthrough legislation to help shape how our global society is impacted by emerging tech. Without the access to and understanding of leading science and tech expertise, Congress cannot be effective at leveraging new technologies for American innovation and prosperity. Furthermore, it cannot effectively protect its citizens from the unintended and sometimes insidious uses of these technological advances. Over the past 2 years, we've interviewed over 140 stakeholders to understand how to increase the science and tech capacity for congressional personal offices and committees. Today, I want to highlight 3 recommendations based on our research. First, refund the Office of Technology Assessment to create objective institutional capacity on S&T issues. Congress should have a dedicated support agency with explicit expertise on science and tech issues with 4 main characteristics. 1, it should be bicameral and a bipartisan body that's responsive to the needs of all members rather than senior leaders alone. 2, it should evaluate and thoroughly consider all options and ideas from a broad spectrum of diverse stakeholders. 3, be comprised of independent experts. And 4, offer policy options, not solutions. In 2019, the subcommittee drafted an appropriations bill that allocated $6 million to the OTA. Separately, a bipartisan bicameral group of members introduced the Office of Technology Assessment Improvement and Enhancement Act, which seeks to refund and revitalize the OTA for the 21st century. Our research has led me to conclude that a newly reconstituted OTA offers the best opportunity to provide members with objective, responsive science and tech expertise. While the GAO's STAA group has the potential to fill some of the S&T gaps, we heard reservations from several stakeholders consistently about its potential efficacy. Our second recommendation is to create a dedicated fund for STEM staffing. One of the most common ways for STEM talent to support Congress is through fellowships from organizations like AAAS and Tech Congress, who place technical talent in personal offices and committees. Executive branch detailees also offer Congress technical expertise and additional STEM capacity. However, there's more demand for STEM talent in congressional offices and committees than external funders can support. For example, in the last fellowship cycle, there was congressional demand for over 100 AAAS fellows, but only enough to fund 33. Furthermore, these fellowships typically are time-limited placements, which reduces institutional memory and makes it difficult to retain expertise over the long run. This subcommittee should create a dedicated fund that supports offices and committees in recruiting and retaining STEM talent. A new fund would stimulate demand for science and tech expertise within Congress and would serve as a signal to STEM talent that it is welcome and valued in the policy advising process. With a modest investment, this subcommittee can play an outsized role in encouraging personal offices and committees to hire STEM talent. In the first year, we recommend the fund be seeded with $1 million to support salaries. In future years, this vehicle could be expanded and used to support STEM recruitment and training efforts. And lastly, address workforce salary concerns to attract and retain STEM talent. The legislative branch is underfunded, compromising just 0.7% of the non-defense discretionary spending. The fiscal year 2020 members' representational allowance is 15% lower than a decade ago, adjusted for inflation, even as the average numbers of constituents served by members continues to increase. As a result, representatives are tasked with doing more with less, whether by hiring fewer staff or paying existing staff less. According to the Brookings Institution, between 1979 and 2015, staffing on committees and support agencies has been cut by 40% each. Overworked and underpaid staff don't have the time to develop expertise on the S&T issues they're responsible for covering. Congress should increase committee budgets, allowing them to hire additional staff members and pay more competitive salary, which will help them retain the staff they already have. Specific to the House, Congress should raise members' personal office budgets, remove the cap on office personnel, and increase staff pay ceilings. Chairman Ryan, you are already an internal champion of increasing congressional capacity, as are many members who serve on this subcommittee. You now have an opportunity to lay the foundation necessary to increase Congress's science and tech expertise for the years ahead. To build support for these necessary changes, I recommend that you establish a fund that's bipartisan and bicameral with a working group to investigate these issues and propose actionable changes that Congress can make to increase its internal capacity. Additionally, I recommend that you hold hearings over the course of 2020 to bring attention to how the underfunding of Congress makes it more difficult to effectively carry out its constitutional duties. Thank you very much again for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. We appreciate what you're saying. I mean, there's obviously a need here for more expertise as things get more complicated.
Right.
And that's what you're advocating for. We should continue the conversation. I think these ideas around STEM staffing and trying to better connect the talent to Congress, I think is a noble goal, one that we share. So let's stay in touch.
Thanks very much.
Really appreciate you coming.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Next is the Executive Director of Issue 1, Meredith McGee.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Ryan, and thank you, staff, for all your hard work. I'm coming here today as Executive Director of Issue 1, a leading cross-partisan organization that works with Republicans, Democrats, and independents on trying to fix the broken political system.
We're going to give you 45 minutes.
Exactly, and I want to be very clear. You know, it's not that we do that because you know, we think there's an inherent kind of end in bipartisanship. It's just how do you get stuff done. And the reason that I wanted to come in person, actually, is we could have just submitted the testimony, but I've spent more than 3 decades here on the Hill as a public interest advocate and lobbyist. And I've worked on a range of issues, as you can well imagine, from the role of money in politics to ethics. I testified before several task forces on congressional ethics. And just really almost anything to do with how Washington works, lobbying, accountability. And I love the work, and I love the opportunity to do this. But what I have seen over those 3 decades is a hollowing out of the staff that is weakening Congress. We've heard from Lorelei about the Article I Renaissance. You know, that's, I only hope, right? That's what we're trying to figure out here. The Select Committee, we've been working very closely with Mr. Kilmer, Mr. Graves, to try and figure out how to really make some good recommendations. But I wanted to come in person to you today because I think most members know what's going on here in terms of your pure capacity, Congress's capacity, to fight back against kind of a runaway system in which the executive branch has just really is able to run circles around what happens in Congress. But there's another aspect to this kind of system as well, and that is without staff retention and without really being able to have an experienced staff, it also allows K Street and the other special interests to run circles around staff here as well. You can imagine, as I've been doing this for many years, I go in now, and most the staff I meet with are not only young enough to be my kids, but maybe my grandkids in some cases. And they're almost to a person very well motivated, smart, really want to be here. They've chosen to come here, even though the starting salary on the Hill is like $32,000. If they went out as a graduate, it'd be about $50,000. But they come here because they want to be here. The bad news is that I know that sometimes where you put a comma in the piece of legislative drafting changes the meaning. And all the good intentions in the world don't really outweigh the experience that many of the other folks on the outside bring to bear here. I've seen many times where, staff is told by their boss, go draft this bill. So they go out and say, well, what am I supposed to do? And so what do? They call up the interests often. They're going to be affected by it. If it's something dealing with Democracy Fund, if I'm lucky, they call me. But what happens in this is that when you're young and inexperienced, you don't know where the bodies are buried. And so the staff retention is a key element of this. So in the written testimony, we've outlined a number of these issues about Congress's capacity. And so I would urge you to kind of just really try and take that. But I think most members I know, and I talk to members almost every day, are aware of the dynamic here. So I want to focus in on kind of two particular things that I think would make a big difference. Not only is pay an issue, you've got to pay people to be able to get them to stay. I see repeatedly people come, they stay here a few years, they get married, they have their first kid, then they got to send their kid either to daycare or to school, and they can't afford to be here anymore. Well, we're losing people from this place right at the time where we need them. The other part I want to highlight here, though, is that about half the people I've lobbied in my life who leave the Hill, which is almost everybody I feel like, is really the problem of management. The chiefs of staff and the legislative directors, committees folks often have moved up through the system because of their policy expertise, not because they know how to manage people. And so this ability for Congress to spend some time when you get to a point in your career where you're actually managing people, that you have to get management training. There are too many screamers. There are too many others, situations here where the management is a large part of why people leave. So I just wanted to come up in person. As I say, you can see this. There are some really good recommendations out of the Select Committee. But to make the plea on behalf of the American people, right, they are not well served when special interests who can afford to sometimes triple salaries of staff and come and work on that behalf of the private interest. Yeah. It's the American people that suffer. So,
amen.
Thank you.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you so much for your work. And it's really important to have people like you say that, as opposed to people like us. Because, of course, it sounds like we just want to pay our staffs more.
Right.
And it looks self-serving. The reality of it is, having been a staffer and have worked here and watched the disinvestment, it's critical.
Right, and it's the thing that best serves your constituents. I think it's not about feathering your own nest, right?
Yeah.
It's ensuring that your constituents are best served, and we're trying to get that message out in many ways.
And to the management training as well. You weren't here for when they were pitching the recommendations, but they mentioned the training for members and leadership training for members, of which, of course, managing people would be part of that.
And then, on the Hill, the actual management of people often falls not to the member, but to the chief of staff or to the LDs, and same on committees.
Oh, yeah, we push it off on them.
Well, you guys are busy doing other things.
We are doing other things.
So, that's the part
Team
that
effort.
sometimes gets lost.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you for holding the hearing.
You got it. Our final witness is the Deputy Director of Internet Architecture Project, Center for Democracy and Technology, Maurice Turner. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Floor is yours.
All right. Saving the best for last, I hope.
Well, yeah, I don't know if you get a consensus on that or not.
Anyway, I appreciate the opportunity. Good afternoon, Chair Ryan, members of the subcommittee, staff, everyone listening. My name is Maurice Turner, Deputy Director at Center for Democracy and Technology. My testimony focuses on the practical implications of increasing technical literacy and capacity within congressional member, committee, and support offices. There is a dire need for Congress to have access to unbiased, timely, technical understanding across a number of technology-related issues facing America today. Technology and innovation has been the foundation of American prosperity for generations. The significant structural challenge that Congress faces today is its inability to keep pace with the technological innovations. Companies at the forefront of those innovations are, in fact, incentivized by profit-seeking motives to maintain a knowledge gap between themselves and their congressional regulators. Researchers and advocacy groups like CDT play an important role in filling some of this knowledge gap with the understanding that they have limits to their ability to access technical information, employ technical experts, and fund sustained efforts across multiple domains of expertise. Congress needs the support of a dedicated, independent technology research and assessment office, one that can answer key questions around technology's impact on the people in the U.S. and also do so at the pace of technology rather than at the pace of political change. In short, it needs to create career paths on the Hill for non-lawyers, for the kind of people who are comfortable wearing a suit as well as having stickers on their laptops. Former House staffer Travis Moore recognized this gap and he did something about it. He created a program called Tech Congress to bring those kinds of folks to congressional offices as fellows. That's how I got my mid-career break into tech policy. I've spent my entire professional life weaving through different levels of government and across multiple sectors with the goal of leveraging technology to bring improved access and efficiency to government services. So much of my career has been spent trailblazing a path because so few opportunities exist for someone with interest in both policy and technology. Other fellows have come through the Tech Congress program from tech companies like Microsoft, Google, and IBM, from other advocacy groups, and even from branches of our very own military. They have been placed in influential committee and leadership offices in the House and Senate because their skills, experiences, and insights are valuable and directly support the work of other staffers. Career pathways like this should be expanded and codified to build a congressional pipeline of technical expertise. The federal government is facing a once-in-a-lifetime fiscal challenge that are projected to cost trillions of dollars in areas like healthcare and infrastructure. Some of that will be paid for with the efficiencies gained by developing and leveraging new technologies. By investing in the policy process itself, Congress can be better equipped to monitor, react, and respond to modern issues in time for American values to be incorporated, rather than ceding that global leadership role to other powers like the European Union or China. I thank you for the opportunity to express my support for the committee's commitment to sustained and increasing funding of efforts to attract individuals and cultivate career opportunities that increase the technical literacy and capacity within congressional member, committee, and support offices.
Great, fantastic. I think there's definitely a general theme here, not with everything, but upgrade technology, more of a focus, more of an investment. So again, $2.5 billion increase this year for all non-defense discretionary divided by 11 subcommittees. So we're going to do the best we can.
Keep fighting for that share.
Well, we sure will. Don't worry about that. But we appreciate you coming in and sharing your story.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, and I would thank all the public witnesses. Thank you so much. You could look right out the window there. You're in the mix, so we appreciate you coming in and accessing the government. This committee is adjourned.